So today I want to talk about tackling difficult passages. I've been really busy lately designing my grade 6 lesson book and also working on this jig from Suite BWV 996 by Bach. And that passage right there is starting at bar 17. And it's a particularly difficult passage, especially if you include all the notes. It's like a combination of being really thick and active and fast, and also like have awkward stretches and shifts all the time. So like all those things in combination are really tricky. But every student is practicing pieces and there's a difficult passage. So today I just want to talk about approaching those passages and how I usually approach them. So I kind of usually have a checklist of how I will approach a piece like this. Of course, you pick a spot to practice. So you spot practice a section that you know gives you trouble. You got to stay calm and give it lots of time. You have to break down the movements. You have to break down the music. You have to focus on any specific issues with your technique probably, or musical issues. You have to practice any related techniques. So you might be noticing weaknesses in your techniques, and you can practice them away from the piece with technical exercises. And then of course you can do slow metronome work, keeping track of your progress. So I'm going to go through all of those different topics today. So the first one was pick the spot. So I've already picked that awkward spot, and it's awkward for so many reasons. But whatever section you pick in your music might just be one thing that gives you trouble about it. Pretty much everything about that passage gives me trouble, especially as I bring it up higher in speed. So first thing is to stay calm. There's always going to be a difficult passage in your music if it's at your level and if it's challenging you a little bit. You have to make sure the piece is indeed at your level, that you're not pushing the limits too far, because that would be dangerous, of course. But if it's at your level, there's always going to be something to work on, and that's part of the joy of practicing music forever. There'll always be something to work on, and you have to enjoy it. So you have to stay calm and make sure you tell yourself it's going to take a lot of time. So usually the first thing I do, if it's a technically difficult passage, rather than a musically difficult passage, but if it's technically difficult, I will often first just break down the movements. So what I mean by that is, instead of just going super slow, which is good, but I'll also just really break the movements into clear sections. So it's chord, shift. So when you shift, you get your hand in a good position during the shift before you even play the next notes. So it's chord, shift, play, chord. So I include that movement because the chord shape stays down, right? Shift and chord shape. Shift, chord, counterpoint, stretch, barre. So, breaking it into, you forget about the rhythm and just break it into physical movements and shapes so that you can make sure that you are actually doing the movements out of context, but that there's no inherent issues in just actually playing the written material. Piecing it together will be very difficult, but playing the individual chunks, you want to make sure that you're confident. So for me, if I slow it down enough and I break it into chunks, I'm confident with all of these shapes, at least in the sense that I can do them out of context. So the next thing I might do is I might break down the music a little bit. So instead of practicing it all, I might just practice one voice of the music. That way, I'm just learning what the music's all about and how the upper voice works. And I could also practice the lower voice. So I break up the music just so I understand what I'm trying to do musically and what the music is doing in the individual voices. So we break down the physical movements, we break down the music. Then you need to focus on any specific issues. So for example, when I start bringing this up to speed, sometimes I miss that shift. Like something about my fourth finger placement is a little bit off, or not, my finger's not curved enough. So I will say like, okay, I need to practice that shift. That was no good, right? Break down the movement. Play, shift, place. Play, shift, place. Blend it into one movement. Now it's feeling much more confident after doing like the really breaking it down into play, shift, play. So, and you have to go through all of it like that. Maybe in this particular passage, some of these chord shapes would give me second thought. So maybe I need to practice going from this chord to that chord. It's like, it's funny because I'm shifting these fingers up and switching a string in this finger, and it's all awkward. So again, identify an issue and make sure that you're practicing that specific issue. And then practicing related techniques. Sometimes when you're practicing a piece, you may just discover that you've neglected some aspect of your technique for a little while, and you better just bring it back up to level. So like in this piece by Bach, there's just some thick music in terms of speed versus like counterpoint. And so, some of this stuff is like a huge finger independence counterpoint exercise, and it's pretty awkward. So maybe I just want to like practice some finger independence and stretch exercises, right? Exercise from my technique book. It's a link for that underneath the video. But like O'Dare's favorite drill from Pumping Nylon, those kinds of exercises that work your finger independence and your stretches. It's important to make sure that your technique's in good order if you're practicing a piece that requires, a multitude of different techniques. And then the final thing is just like the day-to-day, it takes as long as it takes. Metronome work. If let's say like at the moment my potential, I want this piece to go more like at 120, but this is 80 at the moment. So that's even this 80 is pushing it. I'm buzzing, making little mistakes. So like, you got to turn it down to 40, and then you take your pen and your pencil, actually this is better, and you write 40 on the side of the passage on the page. So you write the 40, and then you practice it. Buzz. Etc. Once you've been able to play through the passage successfully quite a few times at 40, like quite a few consecutive times. And then you can cross off 40 and write 42. So you raise the metronome to 42, which is almost unnoticeable in terms of like a difference in tempo. And then you do it again. Let's say I can do that like 5 times consecutively, correct? Then 42, you cross 42 off. And then tomorrow I raise it to 44. And you keep just going up. It takes as long as it takes. If it's a difficult piece and you want to play it, it might take days, or it might take weeks, or it might take months. But tracking your progress like this and making sure you're actually doing it correctly will allow you to see that you're making progress. And then the long-term aspects of it won't feel so painful, right? Taking a few months to get a passage won't feel too painful if you can clearly see that you're making progress as you go. Like, oh, I've gone all the way from 40 to from speed 40, 42, 44, 46, 48, 50, 52. You know, like you're making your progress and you're getting up to the tempo of the rest of the piece or whatever tempo you're desiring. And it's a great way to stay positive because you can see your progress. And it's a great way to make sure your technique is, you're not overextending your technique or playing in a sloppy way. If you're feeling really confident at those slow speeds, when you check it off, then you can be confident you're making progress on the passage, and it's probably good for your technique as well. So that's a lot of different things, and different people combine those different things I talked about in different orders. For me, staying calm, breaking down the movements, shift, play, chord, new chord, shift, chord. Breaking down the movements first, for me, it feels really good because then I can just tell myself like, oh, I can play all the shapes. It is physically possible for me to do. If it wasn't physically possible, I'd either have to double check my technique and guitar position, and depending on what level you're at, you have different things you have to check. Or you have to edit the music, but that's like the last thing you would possibly do. You have to go through all of these steps for as long as it takes. And then after, if you've gone through all of that process, maybe you would edit the music or something like that. But nevertheless, different people will work through it in different ways depending on what they feel. But the danger for most students is that they just go to play it. They just go and play it. And they're practicing it every day, and they just hope that it will get better magically. But they're not actually taking any specific steps, or they're not using any specific techniques or methods to improve it, and they're just hoping that it will get better. If you get into the habit of working on your difficult passages like this, I think, or in just your entire pieces like this, you might find that you have a more positive frame of mind. You just know that it takes time, but you know how to progress through progress. You know how to go through the steps of progress in order to be successful. So I hope you found that helpful, and that's what I've been up to, working on the grade 6 book and working on this piece. This is the last movement in that suite, and I've been recording them all, but this one's definitely a challenge, so I'm just going through it like that.